Hi, my name's Pandora, and this is a file to cover the text editing issues I came across when I was looking at a file that had been submitted to the www.inkscapecuttingdesign.com forum. It's a great resource if you're trying to learn Inkscape, and my thanks to John, who gave me permission to use this file, which is, as you can see, about the Dallas Fire Department to work on and work through these issues.
So, from long experience, there are two things I do before I do anything else. First of all, I always work on a copy, and the simplest way to do that is to come over to the layer palette, click on the plus sign, and say, I'm going to call it my copy layer. I'm going to make sure I'm on the original, select it, and use Ctrl plus D. This makes an exact copy of the file. And then I'm going up to the layer palette, and you can either use Shift plus page up if you like keyboard shortcuts, or click on Move Selection to layer above. Just before I click on that, I want you to notice that over here on the right, there is a grey band denoting that we're working on that original layer. Once I click on Move Selection to layer above, you'll see the grey band has moved to the copy layer. This is a good sign that you've actually got it right. Sometimes, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to work. So worth having a check. And if I just switch off the copy layer, here's my original. And if I switch off the original, I can't see anything. But if I switch on the copy layer, here is my copy. So what I would now do is lock the original layer and switch it back on again. And then I'm going to simply click and drag the copy across to this side so that I now know I'm working on the copy. Because the original is locked, I can't do anything to it. But should something crash or I make a mistake or whatever, I've always got the original there to work with. Just a useful thing. The other useful thing I would do is I would click on the Save button. There is an auto-save in Inkscape, but however, sometimes it crashes, and if you've been doing too much, you may lose a lot of working. Right. One thing I forgot to mention is that what is actually the problem with this file? Well, if you want to print it, the answer is nothing at all. It works perfectly well. However, if we go to View and Display Mode and Outline, you'll see that we have quite a different looking file. We've lost the thick lines here. You can see that where the letters cross over, if you send that to a cutter, it will cut. And some cutters, I'm told, don't recognize text as being a cutting file. Therefore, they don't work so well either. So we're going to turn it all to paths to make sure it cuts nicely. So let's just go back to View, Display Mode, and Normal. And you can see we've got something quite different to look at. When I click on it, I can see down here in the information bar, and this bar is so useful, that it's a Group 1 object in Layer Copy. So we go to Path and Ungroup, or Shift plus Control plus G, if you like keyboard shortcuts. And I've still got, if you see down the bottom here, a group now of 22 objects. We don't want it to be a group because we want to be able to work on each part individually. So again, if I go Group, Ungroup, I've now got 22 types of text plus a group. And I can see the texts are individual because of the individual boxes there, and there's one box around this area here. So clearly someone's positioned this quite individually. So let's just click away to deselect it, and let's tackle the text first. As I said, what I want to do is turn it into something that the cutter will like. So what I'm going to do now is make sure that there's no fill on it and just set the stroke. And if I set the stroke, you'll see that it's a pixel of 1. And that actually looks quite good. Now, my cutter I have a silver bullet and it will cut that beautifully. Some people's won't, therefore, how do you get it to be a path? Well, the answer is at the moment it's text, so we need to turn it into a path. So if we go up to Path and go Object to Path, and now we have a group of 9 objects, but it will actually cut quite beautifully like that. So I'm just going to leave it as a group. If I select the text up here, you can actually see that there are lots of different little bits of this text. So what I'm going to do is simply click on the text, hold down the Shift key, and then one by one select each of the letters in turn. And the only reason I'm doing this all in one go is because I'm lazy and I can't bother to do it more than once. So we'll click on the whole thing as it goes around. Now we seem to have the whole lot selected, and we've got 18 objects of text. Again, I'm going to go path, object to path, and I'm going to go path and combine to make sure it's all one object. I'm going to turn off the fill by left-clicking on this X in the corner here, and then right-click and say Set Stroke. And now I've got one object here and one object there. And again, to maintain their proportions, I'm going to, having selected this one, click on this one and say Path and Combine. And now I know that that part will be fine.
So now we've sorted out the outside text, I'm just going to come up and click on the Zoom to Fit selection in window, just so you can see it a bit closer, what I'm up to next. And let's click on this central F. It says down here it's a group of one. We know we don't like groups when we're doing this particular thing, so let's click on Ungroup. It still says it's a group of one, so let's click on Ungroup again. We still have a click of a group, so Ungroup again, and finally we've got a path, which is actually what we want. So now let's ignore that for a moment and click on the D's. Again, we have a group of one, so Object, Ungroup. Now we've got a group of two, Object, Ungroup. And now we've got two objects of type group, which is still not what we want, so click Object, Ungroup. And now we've got two objects of type path, which is exactly what we do want. So while holding the Shift key down, leave them selected and click on the F, and now we have three objects of type path. Just for clarity's sake, I'm going to switch off the fill by clicking on this red X and right-click and switch on the stroke by left-clicking on Set Stroke. And it's these central lines we want to get rid of, and the quick and simple way of doing that is go to Path and Union. And you can see we now have all of the central lines gone, but it will cut out the shape. Before anything else happens, let's click on the Save button. The last thing we need to shape is this Maltese cross saw shape. So having selected it, we can see at the bottom it's a group one of objects. So let's go Group, Ungroup, and now it says a group of two objects, which is sort of interesting. So we'll go Object, Ungroup. And now we've got two objects of type group, so let's go Object, Ungroup. Now we've got two objects of type path, and that's sort of interesting because I'm not quite sure why it's a path. If we deselect by clicking away and select on one, we appear to have one path selected. And if we just use the arrow keys to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can see actually there are two layers. This is this top layer, and if I click on this back layer and turn it red just so you can see it, you can see that we have two layers. Not quite sure why that was in the original file, but obviously it's the way it was done. If we just zoom out a moment, it looks like it's the thicker outline that we want. So while this red is selected, I'm simply going to hit the Delete key on my keyboard. I'm going to select this and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That will put it back in the place it was originally. I was just using the right arrow keys and the left arrow keys to put it back, and click on the Zoom to Fit selection in window. Now I can see down here that it's 9.38 is the stroke, and that will actually cause a problem. If I go back to View and Display Mode Outline, you can see it would only cut as a thin line, and that's not what we want. So let's go to View, Display Mode, and Normal. And because it's selected, what I can do is I'm going to ensure that it has no fill by clicking on this. And then I'm going to come up and go to Path and Stroke to Path. Now, if you notice down here, it says Stroke None at 9.38 and a fill. So let's see what happens. Let's switch off the fill and right-click and turn on the stroke. And it's now 9.38 still. But if we right-click again and click on number 1, can you see we now have two lines, an inner and an outer line, exactly in the right place. So let's zoom out again. And here is our original file, which would be fine if you just wanted to print it. And here is our amended file, which will now cut, hopefully beautifully. So again, just for completeness sake, I'm going to select the central part, hold the Shift key down, select the outer part, and select this part, and go Path and Combine. And that'll make sure it's all one file, so if it's moved or if it's resized or whatever happens, it'll all do it in one go, and it'll maintain the proportions and hopefully won't cause any more issues. So if I just switch those off for a moment and come back to my title, this has all been about editing text and issues that may arise. If you have any requests, I'd be very, very happy to hear from you at myrequest@btinternet.com. And please don't forget to look at this website, inkscapecuttingdesign.com. It's a great resource and well worth investigating if you're learning Inkscape. Thank you all for listening, and I wish you a very happy, safe, and healthy New Year.